So Trump says, congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now. When Israel and Iran have worn down and completed their in progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start to ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, and having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. And God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. That's a hot mess.
Takes a little prompting. Um, the best way to really express what happened is in a crude, vulgar fashion, but I won't. Let's try to be polite about it and say when somebody has less than backbone and spine personally, they always perceive that solutions must embrace their worldview. That's not how the world works. So when somebody comes along that has a more accurate, relevant, or related view to how things actually work, that person tends to get attacked an awful lot. So that's what we had here. There were some practical necessities about dropping the MOP, massive ordnance penetrator, a huge piece of ordnance. It drops from high altitude at very, very high speed, and it penetrates great distances into the earth. The last one we had was called a T-12, and that's been 70 years ago, never been used, and it was bigger. It was 20 tons. This one was 14, which is huge.
Well,
it's carried by the B-2.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about what had to be put in place. The thing of it is intelligence seems to be indicating that Iran was excavating its 3 nuclear facilities to dig them deeper, and shortly the MOP, massive ordnance penetrator, I think it was a GB-57, wouldn't have been able to penetrate far enough down to do any good, so it was now or never, and it'd been prepped for a while, so they said, do it. They did it.
Who was they? Who was the they?
United States government.
Are you talking about when Trump bombed them?
Yeah, they dropped 14 of these MOPs, massive ordnance penetrators. They go straight down, they hit the ground at Mach 2, they weigh 14 tons, and they're armored steel, and they penetrate a great depth, mostly almost the length of a football field. And they've got a very interesting amount of high explosives. It causes seismic waves in the earth, so that kind of destroys stuff. So they wanted to contain it, and also apparently their intelligence indicated that the Iranians were moving most of the fissile material out, and there was very little to go radioactive at the time. So boom, good time to hit. They hit. Somebody said, we don't want any part of this.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then it was followed up by some strikes from some Virginia class attack submarines There was a decoy situation going off in the Pacific from one end, and another one went across the Atlantic on the other that was air. So they put some of the B-2 fleet in work, and they've got a B-21 being produced now to replace it so they can afford to risk something that cost about $1.75 billion per airplane, and they've got 19 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
it worked. Nobody liked it. Nobody else in the world has what it takes to carry one of these things. So they dropped the few, 6 or 14, depending upon who you're listening to. Interesting. Classic Rooseveltian Teddy of teddy bear fame. Speak softly and carry a big stick, but in this case,
I was trying to say Iran responded by launching missiles in U.S. military base in um, Kuwait, I think Doha.
had military installations. Nobody got hurt. It was a show, a saving a face episode.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So this is someone here. Yeah, it's Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq. So somebody, I guess, in one of those places, I think this is Kuwait because it looks very fancy. They're filming it while they're listening to music in the background on a yacht.
Yeah, CNN stuff. That's how CNN saved itself from bankruptcy in 1990.
No, but that's so it's like so the missiles that they launched, I guess our defenses blocked it and they said only one went through, but it didn't do any damage or whatever. But I'm like, okay, these people are on a yacht. It looks very fancy and upscale, and they're filming the missiles up in the air.
That's what they did back in 1990 with Gulf War One. The CNN reporters were placed in downtown Baghdad. Then you could see a U.S. cruise missile fly down the street at the 7th floor level, make a sharp right bank at the end of the corner, and then flash when it hit the target.
But see, if that happened in American soil here, like that display, I would be so scared.
Why?
Because I don't
More
first
likely
of all,
statistically to happen here than it is over there. For the last 4 years, you've had these jackasses in the Biden Harris administration who've let the sleeper cells go across. Iran was issuing a threat saying, we'll activate our sleeper cells. You are about to find out something you don't want to find out. So we've let 30 to 50 million people come over in 4 years. They're here. They're in place. The explosives have already been laid. They don't have to have suicide bombers. All they have to do is hit the switch. So that's what you need to be aware of. But they didn't have to limit themselves to small delivery systems. They've had 4 years to carefully craft, plant, devise some massive and very heavy explosives.
all right, so
Probably the
wait,
easiest is ammonium nitrate, America's most popular fertilizer, which the military uses for long pulse explosives, which Timothy McVeigh took down the courthouse in Oklahoma City with.
let me swing it back to the ceasefire because there are a lot of people now, well, Democrats, that are saying that when Trump ordered the strikes on Iran, that it was unconstitutional.
That's bull. There have only been 5 times in the history of the United States that Congress has declared war. And we've been in shoot 'em ups a hell of a lot more than that. Okay, let's see. Let's start off. We went to Gulf War One with no declaration of war. That was George Herbert Walker Bush. We went with his son, George Walker Bush. We started off attacking Afghanistan in 2001, no declaration of war. Then we got into dealing with Iraq with no declaration of war initially. We got into Vietnam with no declaration of war. We got into Korea with no declaration of war. The second Article 2 of the Constitution says that the president can defend the United States. He's the commander in chief, but that doesn't always embrace war. Like, for example, when General Sherman got an order from President Grant to protect the Chisholm Trail or something going along because there was going to be gold shipment going along there, and the bandits or the Indians were going to try to intercept it. He didn't need a declaration of war from Congress in order to bring in the military. When you have a hot and hostile situation, you do not need a war. For example, piracy is defined in Article 1, Section 8, and there is a continuous condition of piracy, and it becomes an obligation of the U.S. Department of Defense or War Department or the Department of the Navy specifically to everywhere in the world to address and suppress piracy. This whole thing about war on terror that Bush did, well, by treaty, hijacking airplanes is known as piracy. And what happened on 9/11 was several aircraft got hijacked. That's piracy. There's an automatic condition of hostilities that the president of the United States did not need a declaration of war to wage. So he simply went and carried out what Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution said he ought to do in terms of suppressing and eradicating piracy wherever found in the world. So in this case, if you had anything hijacked, anything like that, you had piracy. But in this case, it's a matter of defense. If somebody sits there and is ready to go nuclear, and you've got the incoming missiles and you can see it in NORAD and they're incoming, you don't have to wait for Congress to assemble 2 days later to declare war before you can shoot back. Mm-hmm. You see, that's the whole thing. There's a difference between declaring war and fighting. It's not necessarily the same thing. Declaration of war is a condition, not necessarily this action. So it's been clear for 235 years that the president has authority to engage in war-like activity. That is not saying that it is a declaration of war which kicks into place certain international and traditional laws, precedents, and conditions. So anybody says that is a damn fool ignoramus. And I'm not surprised that clowns are running around talking about it because it's been resolved over the last 75 years at great length during the course of the Cold War.
So let me play this clip here.
These are the countries that Obama bombed in his final year of office. Syria, 12,192 times. Iraq, 12,095 times. Libya, 496 times. Yemen, 35 times. Somalia, 14 times. And Pakistan 3 times. 26,172 bombs for a total of 3 bombs every hour of every day in only 1 year.
Okay, example. This is what presidents do.
No, well, the reason why I play that is because he didn't ask Congress for permission.
You don't have to.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Need Congress to declare war, but warfare is not necessarily absolutely limited to war.
Right, but they're coming after Trump, right?
They can't come after him. That's just some ignoramuses talking flim-flam that are trying to promote their sorry lost cause. And the main thing is the stuff hasn't stopped because outside of the formal institutions, which are opposed by internal opposition in Iran, by the way, you have this thing where you have these sleeper cells that have already been put in place. And these people may independently say, oh, to hell with all of that. We're doing our own thing. We're in place. We're going to do it.
AOC is calling for Trump to be impeached. That's really highly unlikely, isn't it, Colson?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, again, with her, so stupid, so ridiculous. All this is just, trying to say something to get on TV or have a soundbite that gets carried in media. The Democrats didn't say anything when Barack Obama launched airstrikes against Libya. When Barack Obama launched airstrikes against Syria, they did nothing. They were quiet. They cheered him on, so on and so forth. The president of the United States does have constitutional authority for strikes when it comes to military force. That's why they're the commander in chief. And so a lot of colleagues on Capitol Hill, they're talking about the War Powers Act. But the War Powers Act is something that's been litigated in court time and time again, and it does not obstruct a president of the United States from using military assets when they are in the key national interest. And I will add, one of the things that is crystal clear is that the Iranians were trying to actually create nuclear weapons. There's a reason why they have a ballistic weapon system, ballistic missile missiles weapon systems. There's a reason why they were trying to create ICBMs, and that was simply not to just have things they can light off as fireworks in the sky above the skies of Tehran. They wanted it to be able to flex their power in that region and around the globe. And since they are a terror factory, that is a fact, we simply could not let that happen.
The real danger with Iran is they do have high tech in one place that's crucial. They're supplying most of the small and medium drone technology and equipment to Russia in its dealings with Ukraine. So they do have that. They're not exactly completely backwards. Anytime you have the infrastructure to be able to enrich uranium, either plutonium, 235, 238 to make triggers for hydrogen bombs, you've got some technology going on. So they have that. Mm-hmm. And it's not without its consequences. And as is the case here, everything is not homogeneous in Iran. There are dissidents, there are various factions, and the problem we have is that there's nobody that looks like they can control all of these factions. And the only thing, well, not the only thing, but one of the worst things is for some religious crank to come up with a fatwa to say, hey, we got to go for it, and that'll launch the mess. So that's something out of everybody's control. In fact, this Ayatollah that you have right now, this Khomeini here, not the Ayatollah that started it back in 1980, but this Khomeini actually issued a fatwa that declared the manufacturing of the bomb was not going to be. So it actually didn't hurt the cause, but you see there was this separation between the religious traditional interest and those who had another agenda. The other thing too is there's something else going on here. You see the Strait of Hormuz, and it's just a kink in a waterway that gets into the Persian Gulf. And what happens is 20% of the world's oil and gas moves through there. So the Chinese have these huge, several 100,000-ton tanker craft that are getting turned around because they're hacking the navigational systems. So what that does is that puts China in a position where it can force negotiations, I think, with Iran to force in a pipeline so they don't have to ship stuff. They can simply pipe it overland. I think James Bond had one of those as an episode in one of their franchise movies. So that's in place right there. So there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of this. There's an interesting thing going on with the stock exchanges. The current price of crude oil has dropped a couple of dollars a barrel, but it's gone up a couple of dollars. I think the level is $77 for futures. It'll come in about 18 to 28 months. So that's interesting.
So it says, I'm back on Truth Social, and Donald Trump, B-2 bombers safely touched down at Whitman AFB in Missouri after 36-hour Iran strike.
Yeah, in other words, you don't need an overseas base. You can strike your target from Montana.
Right. And it was a clip that I wanted to play with J.D. Vance talking about that those specific bombers.
Yeah, they're interesting.
I think it was
Martin.
No, Kristen, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. And let me just say, Kristen, that we're incredibly grateful and proud of the American Air Force pilots who did an incredible job last night. The operation was really extraordinary. These guys flew from Missouri. They didn't land a single time. They dropped 30,000-pound bombs on a target the size of a washing machine and then got back home safely without ever landing in the Middle East or ever stopping other than to briefly refuel. And of course, they did that in the air. So it's really an incredible operation, a testament to the power of American military. And I think what shows what can happen when you have that great American military in the hands of capable presidential leadership. What we did is we destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. I think we set that program back substantially, and we did it without endangering the lives of the American pilots. That's an incredible thing, and I think we all should be proud. Whatever our politics, we should be proud of what these guys accomplished a very, very high impact mission under a lot of pressure.
That's impressive. They made a bad mistake with the plane's design. It's only got a 2-man crew. And what happens is these 2 crew have to stay wide awake and alert for effectively 36 hours, which they can't. So their solution is to go buy some fold-out lawn chairs at Walmart and put them in the back, and they go take turns going to sleep on the long 36-hour round trip. They need a 4-man crew like they have on board the B-1s. But the B-1s had a problem with heat soaking, so they don't have proper sealing for the fuel tanks and the oil tanks. So when you park a B-1, it continuously leaks what fuel is left on board or oil supplies. So it's a big mess that's under each wing. And those are a little bit older, and each aircraft is 30-some years old. So they are wearing out. They've been saving them. But now that they've got the B-21s online, they can afford to use them. They don't know what they're going to do with the big UFs, which stands BUF, big ugly fucker, meaning the B-52 crew.
You really call it that?
Yeah, that's what it stands for, both, big ugly fucker. So it got made, and the last one was made in 1962. So literally the youngest B-52 in the inventory is 63 years old. And
Gary says the B-1 main problem was ejection.
Well, that's getting out of it. It was designed as a supersonic bomber, and then they changed it to be a low-level penetrator instead of a high-level Mach 2 penetrator. And then they did a few things on it to make it more stealthy. It works, but the problem is they're wearing out. They went into service before 1980. So the same thing with the B-1, B-2. Carter announced that he was going to put the B-2 into operation back in the 1970s. So we have had 21 B-2 bombers made at 1.75 billion an airplane. We lost 2 of them, so we have 19 left. So they're limited for super special missions because we usually can get air superiority. We have these B-52s. And as I was getting ready to say, we have the ridiculous situation where we actually have current pilots and a given serial number B-52 who had their great grandfathers as the original pilot of the very same airplane.
All right, I want to play this clip real quick.
Yeah, so it's crazy.
Seconds ago, the president went to Truth Social and typed this. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. Complete and total ceasefire is what he typed.
Yep.
What does that mean? How did it come about? What's the development here?
Well, we were actually working on that just as I left the White House to come over here. So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line. I think what it means, Brett, is quite simple. First of all, the president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very, very big thing. Now, what that means, I think, is we have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds. Because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. And I think that's what the president is really trying to figure out here, is to build a long-term settlement here to where we can have peace in the region, where our regional allies and, of course, the American people, most importantly, can be secured, but where we can ensure that the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program that has already happened is not something they try to rebuild.
So here's the thing, right? Because Trump announced the ceasefire, but then Iran, was saying, we didn't agree to anything. It was an Iranian official claiming that Tehran never received a ceasefire proposal from the United States and saw no reason to end the war with Israel and the United States. The official claimed that Tehran would continue the war and that remarks from Israeli and U.S. leaders would be viewed as a deception to justify continued attacks on Iran. At this very moment, the enemy is committing aggression against Iran, and Iran is on the verge of intensifying its retaliatory strikes with no ear to listen to the lies of its enemies. So,
as I said, internal opposition, politics. Trump, by the way, vetoed Israel's urging to take out the Iranian leadership. Apparently, Trump has learned that very vital lesson that America seems to have forgotten. When you destabilize an area, you create chaos. All through the last several hundred years of European history and world history, has been learning and relearning that mistake. You do not destabilize an area. And quite often you see strange looking stuff where one group comes in, beats the crap out of another, and then props up its old regime so it does not get destabilized.
well,
Destabilization is a bad thing.